अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सगणरघुनाथान्वितां तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सगणललिता विशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवयात् भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठकी। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। जयतां सुरतोपङ्गो मम मन्दमतेर्गति मत्सर्वस्य पदाम्भोजो राधा मदन मोहनौ। Hare Krishna, Prabhuji and Matajis. Thank you all very much for this opportunity, for letting me speak. I'm totally unqualified. I'm young, and there are very senior devotees here. But I would like to take this opportunity as a service to just to share whatever I've learned from all the different Vaishnavas. So I first take permission and blessings from all the Vaishnavas assembled here. I also offer my prostrated obeisances to my spiritual master, Mahavishnu Goswami Maharaj, my Shiksha Guru, Vaisheshika Maharaj, and also my parents, seeking the blessings of Radha Madan Mohan, both at home in Chennai and here in ISKCON of Silicon Valley. So we can start today. So this is the verse. Can I share screen, Prabhu? Or
Yeah, I give you the permission.
okay,
You can show.
okay, yes. Is it getting shared? Sorry. Is it getting shared now?
Yeah, it's coming.
Okay. Can you see the verse?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So now, okay. So we start with this verse. This is from Canto 3, Chapter 26, and verse 27. We're going to cover 27 and 28. So this is the fundamental principles of material nature. So yes. Vaikarika Vaiku. So is it? Are we going to repeat, or just can I just read the verse, or how is it, Prabhu?
Yeah, you can recite, and then if you want, then people will recite. So you can first recite.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Vaikarikadvikurvanan manastatvam ajayata yat sankalpa vikalpabhyam vartate kama sambhavaha. Vaikarikadvikurvanan manastatvam ajayata yat sankalpa vikalpabhyam vartate kama sambhavaha. Vaikarikadvikurvanan manastatvam ajayata yat sankalpa vikalpabhyam vartate kama sambhavaha. Does anyone want to recite?
वैकारिकाद्विकुर्वाणान् मनस्तत्त्वम् अजायत विकल्पाभ्यां वर्तते कामसम्भवः.
वैकारिकार विकुर्वाणं मनस्तत्त्वम् अजायत यस्संकल्प विकल्पाभ्यं वर्तते कामसम्भवः. हरे कृष्ण.
Hare Krishna. Synonyms. Vaikarikat, from the false ego of goodness. Vikurvanat, undergoing transformation. Manaha, the mind. Tattvam, principle. Ajayata, evolved. Yat, whose. Sankalpa, thoughts. Vikalpabhyam, and by reflections. Vartate, happens. Kama sambhavaha, the rise of desire. Does someone want to read translation and purport, or?
From the false
Hare
ego.
Krishna.
Yes.
From the false
Yes,
ego
Prabhu.
of
Yes.
goodness.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. From the false ego of goodness, another transformation takes place. From this evils, the mind, whose thoughts and reflection give rise to desire. I'll read the purport also.
Yes, Prabhu, please.
The purport by Srila Prabhupada. The symptoms of mind are determination and rejection, which are due to different kinds of desires. We desire that which is favorable to our sense gratification, and we reject that which is not favorable to sense gratification. The material mind is not fixed, but the very same mind can be fixed when engaged in the activities of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, as long as mind is on the material platform, it is hovering, and all this rejection and acceptance is asat, temporary. It is stated that he whose mind is not fixed in Krishna consciousness must hover between acceptance and rejection. However, advanced man is an academic qualification. As long as he is fixed in the Krishna consciousness, he will simply accept and reject and will never be able to fix his mind on the particular subject matter. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Okay, I'm going to read the next verse, 326, 28 too. So, Yet vidurhi aniruddhakyam rishikanam adishwaram sare danivaras shamam samradhyam yogi vishane. Yet vidurhi aniruddhakyam rishikanam adishwaram Sharaden Divarashyamam Samradhyam Yogi Vishanai Yad Vidur hi Aniruddhakyam Rishikanam Adishwaram Sharaden Divarashyamam Samradhyam Yogi Vishanai. Synonyms. Yat, which mind. Viduhu, is known. He, indeed. Aniruddhakyam, by the name Aniruddha. Rishikanam, of the senses. Adishwaram, the supreme ruler. Sharada, autumnal. Indivara, like a blue lotus. Shyamam, bluish. Samradhyam, who is found. Yogi bihi, by the yogis. Shanaihi, gradually. Does someone want to read translation and purport?
Translation by C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The mind of the living entity is known by the name of Lord Aniruddha, the supreme ruler of the senses. He possesses a bluish black form resembling a lotus flower growing in the autumn. He is found slowly by the yogis. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The system of yoga entails controlling the mind, and the lord of the mind is Anuruddha. It is stated that Aniruddha is four-handed with Sudarshan Chakra, conch shell, club, and lotus flower. There are 24 forms of Vishnu, each differently named. Among these 24 forms, Sankarshna, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Vasudev are depicted very nicely in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where it is stated that Aniruddha is worshipped by the yogis. Meditation upon voidness is a modern invention of the fertile brain of some speculator. Actually, the process of yoga meditation, as prescribed in this verse, should be fixed upon the form of Aniruddha. By meditating on Aniruddha, one can become free from agitation of acceptance and rejection. When one's mind is fixed upon Aniruddha, one gradually becomes God realized. He approaches the pure status of Krishna consciousness, which is the ultimate goal of yoga. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhu, for reading. So now we're going to look at this verse. So just prepared a short presentation, and we'll try to cover as much as possible today. And then we can probably continue next week, whatever remains here. Because the topics which we are looking to cover today and next week are pretty similar in terms of it's dealing with the inner software, and that's, if that's the term we can use, is dealing with the inner senses or the internal senses. In terms of we're dealing with the mind this week, and then we're going to deal with the characteristics and the formation of intelligence. So how intelligence takes birth, that's what we're going to see this week. So we all know that this is a presentation by Kapila Dev, Lord Kapila Dev, who is non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he's presenting these different principles of fundamental principles of material nature, also known as Sankhya metaphysics, to his mother Devahuti. So Mother Devahuti had asked a question. She was saying that she's feeling agitated, so please give me the solution to the agitation. So then Kapila Muni starts explaining, and in one of the verses in between, he mentioned that bhakti or devotional service is a way of dissolving the subtle body. So that would include the mind, intelligence, etc., etc. But after that, now we are trying to understand where did all these different elements or functions, inner functions, Prabhupada calls these as the internal energy. So the body and the other things, they are kind of like an external energy. This is not from the level of Krishna, this is from the level of the soul. So we'll try to see that quote soon. So dealing with the internal energy, and it's kind of like the inner software that deals with the external hardware of the body. So we are trying to see the source. We're trying to see how these came about. So so now if you see the title, I've used the word uncooking the primordial soup. This is from Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj. So the entire chapter is a discussion on the sources of different elements. So now we have to go to the primal state. So the initial state from where all these different elements have started to emerge. So when we look at that, we are aware of the term called pradhana. So pradhana is the unmanifested state. So from pradhana, all these different elements are coming out. So we can think of pradhana as a primordial soup. So when I'm saying primordial soup, it's a combination of different elements in the unmanifested state, in an differentiated state that's existing together. And we all know that by the glance of Lord Vishnu, these all elements, they begin to differentiate and come out. So it's like you have a soup with all these different, let's say like 10 or 15 different vegetables, let's say some salt and pepper and whatnot. And all these are together like well ground and mixed into the soup. And now they're going to differentiate and come out. So I want to present this as something that's related to the 5 topics of Bhagavad-Gita, which we all know are Ishvara, Prakriti, Jiva, Karma, and Kala. This is not an exact parallel, but I'm trying to draw some parallels. And one of the reasons is Romapada Maharaj in his lecture on this topic very specifically says that this Sambandha Gyan, right, is the basis of our bhakti. The entire bhakti process is founded on Sambandha Gyan. If we don't have a good Sambandha Gyan, then sometimes it's possible. It's not like it's not a definitive, but it's possible that we might have trouble understanding the energy with which we interact, because all we see outside, when we look at the world outside, or when we look at our own self, especially like this verse is going to talk about mind. So initially it was talking about more complex aspects, which we might consider more like closely related to, like, pradhana, mahatattva, very scriptural ideas. And then now it's coming into topics that are considered now by the educationists or materialists or scientists or however we want to call them. They're very interested in studying the mind. They're very interested in studying the intellect, and in so many different ways. But again, there is a lot of things that are missing. And Prabhupada specifically makes a comment in his lecture of how the Western psychological system, the analysis systems, they do not perform a thorough job in terms of understanding, like, where does our identity come from, and then what is the continuity of consciousness. So these terms become a little bit amorphous, or if you want to use Prabhupada's words, he calls it hodgepodge. So there's a big problem in Western philosophy where they consider the soul as, there's a kind of conflation between the mind and the soul, and there's something like a soul, and then like they think that's kind of eternal, but they don't know how to deal with like what's the mind, and like, are you your thoughts, and it becomes very amorphous in that space. So that is a very specific comment by Prabhupada in his lecture on actually the next two verses. But they are very closely related. All these topics are very tightly related because it's focusing on these different aspects of like ego, intelligence, and consciousness, and so on. So it's very important for us from a Sankhya perspective to get a very good understanding. Some of the many other religions don't have such a detailed analysis. Buddhism has like an amorphous understanding, but it's, again, there's this problem of voidism, so they get into they get stuck in that. But the Vedic system, the Vedantic system, especially the Sankhya, which is aimed towards the final understanding of Bhakti Yoga, is very detailed. It is very well developed. And what I want to do here is to show that this is very relevant to us, and it is not something that's just in the air, or something that's like, of course there are always going to be aspects of Sankhya, or aspects of anything related to spiritual understanding, spiritual knowledge. They're not going to be something that are going to be completely things that we can totally put our finger on and say, well, okay, now I understand every aspect of it. There are always going to be some complex aspects which we might not be able to grasp with our limited understanding. In the conditioned state of life, we may have so many limitations, so we might not be able to understand it. But at the same time, I want to show that this is, I want to kind of present this as something that's more in the sense of our daily lives, or the way we live our lives is very much grounded in this whole Sankhya philosophy, and that gives rise to the way we live life. It gives rise to Vedic cosmology, our understanding of the universe, and everything. So this is kind of the origins. It's dealing with the origins philosophy. So I want to present it at these different levels. And before that, I want to read something which actually Romapada Maharaj mentioned. So this is a very tough topic. So before that, we will just try to hear about what Prabhupada felt in terms of discussing difficult topics. So we all know that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he wrote his commentary on the Brahma Samhita, and the disciples were trying to publish it. And then some of them, like you see, like Kirtanananda says, some of us have difficulty understanding Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So then they were requesting, like, Prabhupada, why don't you write some purports to Bhaktisiddhanta's commentary on Brahma Samhita? Basically, there is the Brahma Samhita, And then there's Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's commentary, and they're requesting Prabhupada to have another level of commentary on that commentary. So, and then Prabhupada was very open, and Prabhupada very nicely says something, and this shows the real quality of a pure devotee in terms of like his patience and everything. And this is just the humility of Prabhupada. We know that we know that this is a pure acharya and he understands everything, but this is just he's showing his humility, and I found it very interesting. So then he said, when Guru Maharaj was speaking, at least my brain was puzzled. Even he would speak in Bengali, it was very difficult to understand. You see, he was speaking from a very, very high platform, but I wanted to hear him. That's all. Even I did not understand it. That he appreciated. This boy does not go away. He hears. And actually, that was my position. In the beginning, I could not understand what he was speaking, but I wanted to hear it. That's all. I was very much anxious to hear it. That he marked, and he was kindly pleased on me that he wants to hear. He does not go away. That was my policy. Let me hear. Even I do not understand. Let me hear. That's all. Yes, actually, I did not understand in the beginning what he was speaking. So Bhakti Siddhanta's writing is not very easy to understand. Yes, but we should try and read again, and simply that vibration will help us. That's all. It is transcendental vibration. Not that everyone will understand, but if you simply give oral reception to the vibration, that will make him advanced. Not exactly that anyone has to understand. Yes, just like a man is sleeping, somebody is calling him. So this is such a beautiful way, and every spiritual topic. This is not just about Sankhya or drive or this like what we would like consider tough or you know any such difficult conceptual construction of theology. You know, this is not just these topics. Any topic as such, like right, even let's say there are Krishna's pastimes. We don't fully understand like how to appreciate it, even how to be the Rasika Bhakta. So the Rasika Bhakta is one who's enjoying, right? And then Parikshit Maharaj in the 10th canto, he says, Pibantam ye mukam bhoja, chutam hari katamritam. So he tells Shukadev Goswami that Vaisheshik Maharaj loves this verse very much. He keeps quoting it again and again. I think even 2 days, I think sometime back he even quoted it. So that verse is saying that I'm enjoying this nectar that is coming out of the mouth of Shukadev Goswami. Chutam Harikatamritam. The Harikatha is falling, and then I'm enjoying it. So we are not at the level where we fully understand and accept this, and it's really, this topic is very complex. So but again, like, we just have to follow Prabhupada. We just have to attempt to hear, and I think that's the only way. I keep hearing again and again. I try to hear, at least. I don't understand anything, but I hope to try to hear, and then I hope and try to present in some way. I hope that it will be useful. But we can take this as a very inspiring way on how we approach any spiritual subject matter. So yeah, this boy does not go away; he hears, and that is how that's the relationship we want to have with our spiritual master, right? It's not that we understood the philosophy. It's not that we explained it. It doesn't matter. All we want is the spiritual master should think, this boy does not go away; he hears. That's it. This is our aim. So with this in the background, so I'm going to try to start explaining these different ideas. So now I see this whole process of this Sankhya philosophy. Again, this is Romapada Maharaj made a specific comment on how we should see this entire philosophy, this entire process as at different levels, in terms of things that are at the supreme level, at the topmost level, and then at the level where we also can understand, and we also need to connect with it. So it's very important that we build some connection to this, to the Sankhya philosophy, especially in terms of both understanding how like how these different aspects come together in our life. Because when we go when we live out in the world, like, most of what we experience are like in this two regions, the psychology and physiological. We'll see about presidental, but again, I'm drawing that from a spiritual perspective. But this is what we kind of experience. So it's very important to understand how these things link at different layers. And for me personally, attempting to do that again, just from whatever I heard, I it's nothing from is not from my own stuff. This philosophy is so amazing that it's all so beautifully packed into different layers. So it just all comes together, like the entire material world, our experiences, some of the scientific anatomical aspects, and some of the psychological aspects, and all these different aspects, they all come together very nicely. Like you see parallels at different levels, and that's what I'm trying to just present here. So now these 5 levels, you can think of it as left to right, as different expressions of like Ishvara. Then there is Prakriti, and then there is Jiva, Karma, and Kala, something like that. But again, this is not like linear or exact, but I'm just trying to project some of the Sankhya technology or Sankhya theology into these different spheres of understanding, so that it's more linked to us. But so I see it as having different levels. So the highest level is actually the something like what we would consider paranormal to material levels. Again, that's totally spiritual. This is not saying that it's weird or something. This is paranormal to the material level, and that's the highest relationship between the Supreme Lord and his internal potency. And we know from the Chaitanya Charitamrita that there are different rasas, and Sakya, Dasya, Sakya, Dasya, Vatsalya, etc. And then Shanta. And then there's the Madhurya Rasa, which is considered the highest. It's the conjugal love. And within Madhurya Rasa, the idea of Parkiya Rasa, that's the unmarried love, that's the highest relationship. That's the supreme most rasa. So it's like that's the highest, and that's explained through, that's manifested through the rasa dance. So that's the highest. So that's the ultimate. And then we go to the inflection level, where now so that is something that's a very high level. It's very tough for us to comprehend things at the level of that rasa. We have not developed the complete qualifications or the complete we don't have the complete background to understand it because of our conditioning. And also Krishna says it's guhyatamam, it's secretive. So we don't have the complete understanding. So then what this Sankhya is doing is, so I see this as different inflection points. So an inflection point is where there is kind of like a break, a kind of like a split between two different divisions. So I see this the philosophical description of primordial procreation, which is what we are reading now in this chapter, this 3rd canto, 26th chapter. I see this as the inflection point where Krishna, who is completely outside of any obligations to the material world, he's completely transcendental. He does not have anything to do with the material world in terms of pleasure, right? He's the one who's maintaining everything, Matstani, Sarvabhutani, and all those things are definitely there. But at the same time, he's just Bhoktaram, Yajna Tapasam, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. He's meant to enjoy. And like some time back, I had presented the emotively transactive creationism, where we're trying to show that throughout the entire creation process, Krishna is just enjoying. So now at this inflection point, you see that I've shown Lord Shiva and Durga Mata, because that is the Prakriti Yona. So that's the word I use. And the Prakriti Yona is coming from the word Prakriti Yona is coming from 3:26:19. So from that verse, there is the word Prakriti Yona, where the Supreme Lord is injecting, he's impregnating material nature, and that's actually the glance of the Supreme on Pradhana, which converts Pradhana to Mahatattva. So that's Prakriti Yona. So that's kind of the action that's happening at that inflection point. That's how I like. That's kind of like an inflection point where the impregnation of Prakriti is happening, and that is something that's very important for us to understand, because that's how we understand all these different understandings of the origin and development. And then at the next level, there is the psychological level, and that's the point which we are now. So we were talking about, again, I see that as kind of another inflection point where from concepts like Mahat Tattva and so on, like, so the material nature is impregnated, and then the Pradhana gives rise to Mahat Tattva, and then the soup, like I said, it's getting differentiated, and all these different elements are coming out from that primordial soup. So once they start coming out, now we are getting into the realm of psychology, where we're talking about ego, mind, intelligence. And as I said, the problem with Western psychology, which is largely dominated the current understanding of psychology, even though there's a lot of Vedic systems around it, but in terms of prominence and sway, is definitely the Western psychology that has dominated. So there we see they're trying to understand things about like ego and mind, and this ego is kind of, they see it as like, what is your identity, like how do you exist? So again, so there is this level. So this level is where there is these Sankhya concepts, or this primordial procreation, which is generating this, is now starting to get, it's starting to get in the realm of what we as like humans begin to try to understand, at least with our scientific process. If, let's say, we don't want to follow the Vedic system, then we have this, even though the actual way to get this knowledge would be to combine what we know with and making sure it's aligned with the Vedic standpoint. So then we are getting into this level, psychology, and then I've used this word paratantriam, which means dependence. That means this is from 326.7. So from 326.7, that word paratantriam means there is the dependence of the soul of the individual living entity onto the inner senses, or to the inner software, which would be the four inner portions which we saw some time back, which is consciousness, ego, mind, and intelligence. So that's the word for that phase where the living entity starts to develop that kind of like a paratantriam. So you can also see it as the progression of the living entity. That's another way to see it. So if you go from left to right, I call it devolution. This is a term from Dhruta Karma Das, where he wrote a book on devolution, where he says that consciousness is primary and everything is coming from a supreme conscious source. So and then he talks about how there are hierarchies of conscious beings and so on and so on. So this entire Sankhya philosophy is dealing in terms of, it's topically connected to this idea of devolution. So it's the history and origins of material consciousness. It's the history and origins of material consciousness. So it's progressing into a jiva who's supposed to be actually in the paranormal state, right? He's supposed to be part of the topmost whatever the rasa with the Lord, and then he has lost that, and then now he's part of the injection or impregnation by Vishnu into the Prakriti Yona, or the womb of Prakriti. So now he has moved to that point because he has material desires, and then the jiva starts to develop this paratantriam, this dependence on the mind, right? So this is what we'll try to look at today. I don't know how much we'll get to cover, but this is what we'll try to explore today and next week. We try to understand how the living entity is becoming dependent on the mind and certain principles. So it's not just the mind. He also needs to have certain principle to interact with the material world, because the principles of the spiritual world are completely separate from, not completely separate. The material world is actually a reflection, perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So here it needs a different set of principles. So in the spiritual world, like Maharaj would say, the most important person in the room is Krishna, and in the material world, the most important person in the room is me. It's I. It's this concept of me. I need to enjoy. So he has to depend on his internal software, and also he has to depend on the principle. So that is also described in these chapters. So I see this as the different stages that are being described in this chapter. So then is the stage of karma. So what does karma do? So based on the karma of the living entity, he is forced to enter different bodies, right? So, and the body is designed in such a way that it's based on his previous desires. So we all know that the living entity, based on the principles of interaction with the world and with the inner software, he begins to develop desires. He begins to interact with the world, and he wants to enjoy this material world. And because he wants to enjoy them, he needs a specific type of material body, and that's physiological level. And I'm using the word pravishta, which is actually from this famous verse which Prabhupada quoted again and again. So this is 331.1. So we are again going to get to this at some point, like as we read the third canto. We're going to go from 26th chapter, which talks about fundamental principles. Then we're going to talk about understanding material nature. And then we're going to talk about the 31st chapter, which is focusing on the movements of the living entities. So how the living entity takes shelter of another body, and how he develops a biological body. So then he starts interacting with his physiological system, and then he starts interacting with the world and trying to enjoy, and so on. So this is the verse: karmana deva netrena jantur dehopapatye striya pravishta udaram pumso reta kanashraya. So the pravishta means he's entering the body. So now the living entity was originally with Krishna. He loses he moves from the causal portion. He loses all the jnana, bala, kriya. He wanted to enjoy independently, and then he's now part of the process by which he's moving from the belly or the stomach of Vishnu into the Prakriti Yona, into the womb of Prakriti, and then he develops a psychology, and then he enters a body which is physiological, which is based on how he needs to enjoy. So this verse states that under the supervision of the Supreme Lord and according to the result of his work, the living entity, the soul, is made to enter into the womb of women through the particle of male semen to assume a particular type of body. So the soul as such is an independent unit. Of course, there's the covering of subtle body, but then he's entering, after he has developed with the subtle body, he's entering pravishtaha. So he's entering into he's entering into like the structure of a fetus, and then it slowly develops into a complete embryo, and the embryonic process and whatever, and then it slowly comes out and differentiates, and you can see that again see the what we see as a description in the impregnation process of the primordial procreation at the inflection point. So this is kind of the first inflection point. This is the point where the Shambhu is the glance of the Lord on material nature. So we can see that impregnation, and then we can see that because of that impregnation, then there is the impregnation here. And if you read the 31st chapter, you'll see how the fetus is first, it's all lumped together, and then it comes out, and it's very similar. It's somewhat similar to the primordial procreation pastime, or the uncooking of the soup, where like it's all like a soup. He's like a ball of flesh, and then he begins to differentiate and come out, right? So this idea of the soup differentiating is now something that was just philosophically described, and now we begin to see that then we later, as we go through this whole reading of this third canto, we will slowly begin to see the physiological aspects of it and how he develops it. So there's kind of like a mirroring between what's happening at the somewhat of a perverted mirroring of the philosophical level with the physiological level. And the precedental is the process by which the living entity begins to get out of his trap, the entrapments of the mind, his entrapment in a body. He's entrapped in the combination of the subtle body and the gross body, and now he has to get out of it. And how he gets out of it is the pariprashna. So this is again, this is a word I take from Bhagavad-Gita chapter 4 verse 34. This verse is Tadviti pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya, by submissive inquiries, because he goes through a number of different experiences, and through those experiences he begins to have inquiries about his actual self, because he actually doesn't fit in exactly into the condition in which he's put in. So then he wants to find out how to go out. So, and we're going to, so that's kind of, so that's the beginning of his exit from the material world. So if you see on the top, there is a devolution. So there is a consciousness induced transformation of the consciousness induced, and that is the supreme consciousness, that is Vishnu, has initiated the process of the differentiation of the primordial pradhana, and that is developing different elements that are supporting the jiva. So basically we are seeing that Krishna is kind of managing the show, like at the supreme level, the maya dyakshena prakritihi suyatecha characharam. He's kind of managing the show. He's observing everything, he's supervising everything, and he helps. So based on the desire of the living entity, he's setting up everything. And this is the system we need to understand. And another incident which I want to mention is it's our amorphous understanding of Maya, like what Maya is. So once Sachinandan Maharaj went and asked Krishna, so like, why did Krishna create Maya? Like why is there Maya? Like we all often have this question, right? Like we all say it's all desires, we're suffering because of desires, we're suffering because of Maya, we're illusion, we have all this suffering. So then we begin to get this question. So then Prabhupada answered that you have to look at this verse. Shrishti sthiti pralaya sadhana shakti reka chayeva yasya bhuvanani vibharti durga icchan rupam api yasya chacheshtate sa govindamadi purusham tamaham prajami. So this verse it's a very key verse. I want to actually, yes. So this verse, and the most important word is icha anurupam. It says there is the will and in accordance with. So this entire process of creation, because we often ask this question, right? Like, why creation? Like, why this system? Why Krishna has given me this setup? Why are we in this current situation? So if we go to this Sankhya process and understand this devolutionary process of the history and origins of material consciousness, then we can truly set out on the journey of evolution, which is the future and destination of the contaminated consciousness. So the consciousness has to, like a lotus, come out of the water and the muck and point towards the sun. And we know Krishna Surya Sama, right? So Krishna is the sun, and we have to go back to our original nature. So Prabhupada told Maharaj that it is you, Krishna did not create Maya, you created Maya, right? So that means that, so very careful understanding of this Sankhya process will really help us to get an understanding of not only of why we are in this world, but also how Maya came about and how we are going about, and how all these energies of Krishna expand. So by the Icha, by the desire, the different aspects of material nature are beginning to manifest. So now we saw that the original, so now just we've already seen some of these ideas, but what I wanted to mention is that so this idea of Sankhya is not totally disconnected from the ideal process of bhakti, right? So it is somehow connected, but the highest bhakti needs the contact lens of prema. That means the lens premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena, right? We need the contact lens of prema, right? So we need to have that lens on us. Without that prema, we cannot understand this whole, like we cannot appreciate the real meaning of rasa dance, because then we are completely infected with the perverted view of the attraction between male and female. So we just completely take it in the wrong sense. So we need to develop that contact lens of prema. So that's a higher stage. So we see Prabhupada actually in his lecture on 326.19, he says that finally, so he talks about all these, so that is a verse that talks about creation, and that's the verse that talks about how Prakriti was impregnated and so on. But he says that but because of, so all these different aspects that come out from Prakriti, right? And we experience them. And we have to use those experiences to understand that we finally have to go back to the spiritual world. So it is in line with our final, what we would consider the ultimate perfectional goal of a living entity. So it's connected to that, but we have to slowly deal with all these different ideas, develop a good understanding, and then slowly keep practicing bhakti. So this paranormal level is very difficult to understand because it needs the contact lens of prema. But the understanding of the Sankhya philosophy, the procreation pastime that occurs at the inflection between the spiritual world and the material world, that aspect can be understood. Again, it's not fully capturing it, but we can fully understand it with the corrective glass of knowledge. So in the whole understanding of the nature of the origin of the living entity, right? So that's a very tough subject. So in terms of understanding the origin of the living entity, so if we look at the topmost, it's the Parakiya Rasa. We need to develop the Premanjana Churita. That's extremely confidential. But this one, we can develop it we have to develop the glass of knowledge. So in Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna talks about Utkramantam Sthitam Vapi Gunjanam Va Gunanvita Vimuda Nanu Pashyanti Jnana Chakshusha. So we have to develop the Jnana Chakshusha, the corrective glass of knowledge, to understand the origins, so that then slowly one day we can come to the level where we can understand the ultimate level of Parakiya Rasa, or supreme relations between Krishna and his internal energy. So now, so we can see it like as a story, like how I said. So first is the verses 5 to 7, 326, 5 to 7. They are talking about how the living entity loses jnana, bala, and kriya. That means he loses knowledge, perception, and proper activities in the service of Krishna. Those are the three symptoms of the internal energy of Krishna. So first, this chapter is describing how a jiva is losing those three qualities. And because he has lost those three qualities, he can no longer stay at home. His home is the spiritual world. And since he can no longer stay at home because of his loss of those three symptoms, the symptoms of the internal energy, is no longer under the influence of the internal energy. So then he has to go to the material world. So if he has to go to the material world, then he has to develop a principle to navigate the world of cause and effect. So like I mentioned here, paratantrium, he becomes dependent on the psychology, which is consisting of the different concepts of mind, intelligence, false ego, and consciousness. But he also has to develop a principle in order to use his internal psychology to deal with the external world. So that is 326.8. We can look at that verse. It's because it's a very important verse, because this verse also appears very similar wording. It appears in the Bhagavad-Gita in the 14th chapter. So it's Purush Karya Karana Kartritve karanam prakritim vidu bhoktrutve sukha dukkanam pumsaha prakrite para. So now the living entity loses his qualification to stay home. So once he has lost his qualification to stay at home, he has to stay outside. So when it means outside, he has to stay outside the spiritual world. So if he is going to stay in the material world, he has to develop a principle of interaction between him and the outer world. So Krishna sets up the outer world, which is the material nature, in such a way that it's working on cause and effect. So the entire material world, it's working on cause and effect. And the happiness and distress of the soul are caused by the spirit soul himself. So basically there are two levels. The outer world, which is working on cause and effect. Like if I drink cold water, I'm going to catch a cold or something like that. That's the cause and effect that's there in the material world, because the water is interacting with the biological system in my body, and I'm going to catch cold. So that's the cause and effect of the world. And me as a person, I am now unhappy because I did that action. So basically the entity has lost his three characteristics. He develops a principle to navigate the world of cause and effect, and now he wants to go and work on his own. He says, I don't want to stay home. I want to go out into the world, work, and take care of myself. So what he needs, he wants a workstation. So he needs power for the workstation. He needs software, he needs hardware, and he needs physical inputs. So if he wants to go to work, let's say he wants to work. So he needs like a laptop or like a screen and all these setup. And all these different, all the setup, which the workstation setup, which the jiva needs, are provided by the differentiation from the pradhan. And that is actually text 20 to 48. Text 20 to 48 begin to describe how all these different things that he need come out from the pradhana. So we can see now, since the devotee, the actual jiva has decided to leave the spiritual planet, okay, so you can see it as a story instead of seeing it as a philosophical description. And that's what I want to do here. It's not very much relevant to the verse, but I want to set up a story kind of framework for this entire Sankhya philosophy, so that then it becomes easier for us to understand, because that helped me a lot. So I want to set it up that way. So the Lord is facilitating the jiva who wants to leave home by impregnating material nature. So, but before he does that, he does something interesting. So the living entity actually has a spiritual eternal bond with the Lord, right? So if you go to Brahma Samhita, I want to show this verse. Yes, this is the verse. So sanityo nitya sambandha prakritischa paraivasa. The same jiva is eternal and is for eternity, and without a beginning, he is joined to the Supreme Lord by the tie of an eternal kingship. He is transcendental spiritual potency. So this is the characteristic of the jiva. Like we said, he belongs to the spiritual world. He is eternal and he's connected to the Lord by the tie of an eternal kingship. Now the problem comes that the living entity has decided to leave home. So what does Krishna do? Krishna says, okay, so again, this is the point where I want to show the parallels between different levels, where at the paranormal level or at the level of the totally spiritual, that kinship or this relationship it's the eternal kinship, right? The sambandha, nitya sambandha, the eternal kinship between the jiva and the Lord has to now transform. So Krishna says, yes, it's there. Now it's going to get converted into something that's the bond of the material universe. So if you see the next verse, very interesting. So now it says, the divine lotus, which springs from the navel pit of Vishnu, is in every way related by the spiritual tie with all souls and is the origin of four-faced Brahma versed in the four Vedas. So now we begin to see the transformations. So we can, like I said, it's all different transformations. So transformation from the level of the supreme relationship between Krishna and his internal energy, we got to the inflection point. At the inflection point, there was instead of Krishna consorting with internal energy had a setup where Mahavishnu is consorting with, indirectly consorting, because he doesn't touch the material nature directly. So that's why we have that phase is represented by Shambhu and Durga Devi. So now that supreme relationship between Krishna and his energy in the pure state is now converted into we can now see it at the second level as the connection between Krishna and the external energy, or Shambhu and Durga Devi. That's a better way to put it. And Shambhu is actually the glance. So now that relationship, the relationship between Krishna and the internal energy is now converted into the form of the impregnation of material nature, and that's represented by Shambhu and Durga Devi. And that same spiritual bond, which is there, which was always there, which will always exist, now that spiritual relationship is now converted into something like like the umbilical cord. So even if we want to leave Krishna, right? Even if we say, no, I don't want to stay here. I've lost my jnana, bala, kriya. I want to take care of myself. I want to enjoy independently. Krishna says, that's okay. What I do here, I'll do at the inflection point at a different level. And that is what Sankhya is trying to say, that we have an eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord. It is just transformed from something that is purely like it's just totally on the spiritual level, right? So in the spiritual world, there is nothing differentiating like physical and something that's physical that's separate from spiritual, and it's not like that. It's everything is spiritual. So that spiritual is now converted into something that's a bond, that's the umbilical cord. So Krishna is always connected, that is through Mahavishnu, no difference. It's at one level it's the same. So he is now connected to the living entity through the lotus stem on whom Brahma sits. So Krishna never leaves that relationship. So now it's such a beautiful, and that's where we are going to get to, right? Like what we are going to get to slowly as we read this Sankhya chapter, is we're going to see like this transformation from something that is purely spiritual, something that is pure, that is unhindered by anything, completely transcendental. Krishna still maintains that relationship in a covered form throughout, and he never leaves. And this is just, so he not only maintains the umbilical cord, we also know that Krishna is the Paramatma, and then he's everywhere. And also, like later down the road, we'll see in this chapter, it's describing how Krishna will enter into the material world along with the Mahatattva and those five coverings plus Mahatattva plus false ego. And Krishna is going to enter into the world. So Krishna is entering into the world that way. He's still maintaining the relationship. So Krishna doesn't forget us, and there is no way Krishna will forget us, irrespective of what we do. I think that's what Sankhya is trying to hammer on this, because slowly we are going to get to this aspect where everything becomes physical, right? Like it's a physical manifestation. The lotus is a physical manifestation. Of course, it is transcendental because it's connected to the navel of Mahavishnu. But what we are seeing is an eternal relationship is now being like transformed into all these different, like, what do you call it? All these different symbols, all these different like physical manifestations. And that's the idea which I was trying to develop here, where the Sankhya is describing the top arrow, like the top, like how it progresses from the ultimate Parkiya Rasa to the point where the living entity can start questioning, making submissive inquiries about his nature and going back. So at this point, like you see from right to left, it's evolution. So he's slowly going to build all this. And then like up to this, right, he's going to develop the Premanja, the Jnana Chakshush, right? He's going to develop the corrective lens of knowledge. And once he develops that full collective lens of knowledge, then he begins to see everything in the right perspective. Then he slowly starts to develop the complete attraction for the ultimate rasa, the Unnatojvala rasa. So Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Unnatojvala rasa, anarpita charim chirat karnayava tirna kalau, samarpayitum unnatojvala rasa swabhakti shriyam. So that means that the ultimate supreme relationship between Radha and Krishna is presented freely by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So now we have two things to be grateful for. One is that actually the process has to be through this jnana process where he has to develop the complete jnana chakshush to get to this level of Sankhya and then slowly develop the bhakti. But at the same time, we see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is coming and he's breaking open this complete flood of mercy where he's giving the ultimate rasa to everyone in the form of like an easy process of chanting and so on. So we have to be grateful for the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and through Sankhya, but at the same time, through Sankhya, we can also be grateful to the Lord who never leaves us. He is always bonded to us by this umbilical connection. And that transformation from something totally spiritual into something that's manifest and that's lotus and that's umbilical and that's something at least we can partially conceive of is what Sankhya is trying to establish. That's how I see it. It's establishing the ultimate independent nature of Krishna and his ultimate relationship with each and every soul, with each and every jivatma, and how he maintains that relationship throughout, irrespective of how we look at him, or irrespective of how we quit the spiritual world to come to this material world. So again, so what has happened is we can think of it like when we were in the spiritual world, we were the sons of the Supreme, right? We were the dear sons of Krishna. We were directly serving him and we were totally close with him and we were in the ultimate connection with him. But so like Krishna says, Pitaham asya jagato mata data pitamaha. So we saw like how there is a procreational pastime, how there's at the inflection point, and that is actually reflecting the pure consorting of Lord with his internal energy. And we are all the sons, we are all like witness to that supreme relationship between Radha and Krishna. Then we were all in that state. But because of this desire to leave, what has happened is we have now become the sons of Prakriti. So in 8.3.13, it's a very interesting purport from the 8th canto. This is actually, Maharaj mentioned this. It's a very interesting purport. I want to read that. So yeah. So Prabhupada quotes this verse, Sarva from 14.4, Sarva yonishu kaunteya murtaya sambhavantiya tasam brahma mahadyonir aham bija pradapita. Should be understood that all living entities in all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and I am the seed-giving father. Plants, trees, insects, aquatics, demigods, beasts, birds, and all other living entities are sons or parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. But because they are struggling with different mentalities, they have been given different types of bodies. Mana shashtani indriyani prakritistani karshati. Thus, they have become sons of Prakriti or material nature, which is impregnated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now, we've gone beautifully from being the son of the Supreme to the son of Prakriti. But Krishna is still maintaining that beautiful bond. And that's, so as we go through the Sankhya process, we are going to see that. We're going to see how that physical manifestation develops from this pure transcendental relation between Krishna and his living entity. And then we will also at some point we will try to see at how we as a perverted reflection, we have become the sons of Prakriti, and how we as a perverted reflection, we are all struggling for existence, and the mind is the one of the main reasons we are still struggling in the material existence. We're going to see how those things slowly develop, and then we'll also see that how the highest spiritual conception, which is the relationship between Krishna and his internal energy, is now like we have taken the perverted reflection of it, and we are and that's how like we come to this point of this karmana deva netrena, where there is the impregnation of women by man, and then there is the development of the fetus, and so on. So I see like what I'm trying to present here is all these different aspects of Sankhya. They're all like they go very well at different levels. And then I think we should stop now. We can try to continue next week. I think I'm over time, but yeah. So next week we can try to get to the psychological level, where we can see there is a spiritual level. Now there is the philosophical level. Then we get to the psychological level, and then finally we'll get to the physiological level, which is the body, from anatomy and so on, or body structure, like something biological, neurobiological, something like that. So I wanted to set up the framework. I'm sorry I didn't get to the exact topic of this verse, but I just wanted to establish this framework so that we can better appreciate the psychological levels, because now like when we see it like this, we see that, okay, so this is it's all somehow related to the actual what do you call it, this actual pure state of us in the spiritual world. So now we see it at different levels. I think it helps us to get a very good perspective and strengthen our faith in this whole process, because otherwise it just seems like this just so otherworldly, if I want to use the Chaitanya Charan's terminology. We don't want to try as much as possible to kind of bridge the gap between like all of that, and it's just all different concepts from Romapada Maharaj, Vaisheshika Maharaj, and so on. So I think I'll stop there, and sorry if I went over time. Sorry.
Karthik, can you explain
Yeah.
the fifth slide? You didn't explain about the fifth slide, 8 and 9.
Fifth, this one?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So is there time, or I don't know. Do we have time? I'm okay, but do we have time, Prabhu? Girivardhari Prabhu.
Yeah, Prabhu, continue.
Sadashiv Prabhu. Sorry, yeah, I'll try to make it quick. So again, this is again like I try to describe it as a story. So in terms of this whole chapter, I want to see it as like how all these different blocks come together. So first is 326 2 to 4 is describing the three energies of the Lord: the Samvit, Sandhini, and Hladini. And once again, it's not direct. It's just I'm just trying to say it's somewhat representing the symptoms. So again, Sridhar Maharaj always said the energies you can see by their symptoms. So the symptoms of Samvit is, so again, these are again Jnana, Bala, Kriya. So you see like 2, 3, and 4 talking about Jnana, Bala, and Kriya. And then the question starts to become, so okay, then so first there is the Lord, right? This is exactly Jiva Goswami's style. First we establish the Lord, okay, as Purusha, he's the ultimate. Then we talk about the living entity, because he's kind of like he's subordinate, he's an energy of the Lord. So then 5, 6, and 7, they're talking about the living entity losing Jnana, Bala, and Kriya, right? And that's this one. Like he's lost everything, he doesn't know. So he can no longer stay at home. Then the 8th one is, once he loses that Jnana, Bala, and Kriya, how he cannot survive in the spiritual world. So that means he has to survive in the material world. In the material world, he needs to develop so the functioning of the conscious jiva in the non-spiritual world of cause and effect. So the material world, it works on cause and effect. There, bhakti is causeless, Krishna is causeless, everything is causeless. So he's making like a giant leap. So in order to do that leap, and that's the verse Karya Karana Kartrutve, similar to that Bhagavad-Gita verse. Is it 14 something? I forget the exact number, but it's Karya, the 326.8 is very similar. Karya Karana Kartrutve. Hetur, I'm quoting the Bhagavad-Gita version. Hetur Prakriti Ruchite. Purushanam Sukha Dukhanam Hetur Bhoktritva Uchyate. And then if you see the next verse, sorry, yeah. So the next verse is Purusha Prakriti Stohi Punte Prakriti Jan Guna Karanam Guna Sangosya Sadasad Janmayonish. Maybe we should just look at it. Is it 13 or 14? I keep
13.
Is it 13? Okay, sorry, I should have, sorry. Okay, yes. So this is Karya Karana Kartatve, Hetur Prakriti Ruchite, Purushanam Sukham Dukkam, Bhoktrutva Hetur Ruchite. So nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. So why I call this principle, this is from Shatabhuta Das, from his book Mechanistic and Non-Mechanistic Science, where he makes the difference between the Prakriti, which is mechanistic science, which is very well studied by because it's cause and effect, right? So the intelligence is able to kind of grasp it, not exactly, but to some level, you're able to identify cause and effect and so on. But the other aspect, like this happiness and sukha dukkana, happiness, distress, that's he calls it. So for that he says you have to look into the non-mechanistic science, because there is the mechanistic science, but then like there is somebody who is participating in the mechanistic science and experiencing something that we cannot explain by mechanistic process. So I took that idea from his book, and then yes, and then 326.19. So 10 to 18, they're describing the so now that we have the principle for the functioning of the jiva. Now once again the Lord is established. So now the Lord is the cause of both manifest and unmanifest, because we said, okay, we are going to set up a way for the jiva to be in the non-spiritual world. So now we need someone to set it up. So who's going to set it up? The Lord and his energies, they're the cause of both manifest and unmanifest. So the Lord is going to set it up. Okay, so then next, now what is the meaning of unmanifest, right? So the manifest comes from the unmanifest. So the Prakriti is delivered from, Prakriti comes out from Pradhana, right? Like, so the Mahatattva comes out from Pradhana. So again, so then we are describing the different elements of the soup. And then there is the time factor, which we saw that Rama Devi expands as both as time, and she gives the Pradhana shadow. So that's 10 to 18 is the constituents of the primordial soup. And then 19, I consider it again as an inflection point. It's a very, again, it's like a break point, or like border crossing. I don't know how else, like however you want to see that. So then that's the point where the spiritual, now it gets into the realm of Shambhu and the living entities, and then that forms the preamble for the umbilical cord, which is the 522 Brahma Samhita verse, like how the divine lotus is going to come up. So again, that's a physical manifestation, but before that, this first has to happen, because from here, then all this other processes happen, and then Garbhodakshaya Vishnu can go in, and then he can have the navel coming out with Brahma, and so on and so on. And so that's 326.19. That's like an inflection point. And then 19 into 34 is the first thing is we develop the psychological aspects, the inner software. So we'll get to that example. I couldn't get to it today, but it's like I said, it's like a workstation. So there's a person and he's working. So he needs like an inner software. It's like you can consider it as like an operating system or so on. So like an interface, and then he needs everything. So first thing is the inner software. So the inner software is like 19 to 34. And okay, so now the inner software has come out, then we need to do both the hardware and the elements, because the elements combine together to make the hardware, which is his body. So that consists of like the Panch Mahabhut and so on. And then like he also has sense perceptions. Again, sense perception is subtle, but at the same time, like they're a little bit away from the inner software. So the inner software is that which is closest to the soul. And then after that, it's kind of like an internal energy. Then the rest of the stuff is kind of like an external energy. Not Krishna's internal and external. This is from the soul perspective. This is from one of Prabhupada's either lecture or Zoom conversation. I can show that. But so more like a chronological sequence of these different events is what I was trying to describe. Sorry, I think I went way over time. So, sorry for that. I should stop now.
One more.
Yeah.
This inner software means you are talking about mind, intelligence, and ego.
Yes. So when we get to this point, so inner software, consciousness, false ego, mind, and intelligence. Because there's a very specific verse which says that you can differentiate it only by functions.
Oh.
So this verse, which very specifically makes a comment on that. I think it's a very interesting verse. Where it says, yeah, this one, 14. The internal subtle senses, 4 aspects: mind, intelligence, ego, contaminated consciousness. The distinctions can be made only by different functions. So it's like an inner software, and then there are different functions. It's like different aspects of like an operating system. Let's say like one part is like a recycle bin where you want to throw trash. And then like one part is like it's like your Chrome browser, which you want to use to browse something. One part is a file explorer where you can store, copy files. And one part is like your Word, Excel setup, or like, like you can see all your Excel files and so on. So it's all software in the sense that it's all, I'd say at one level, it's all just code, right? It's all just code. But then each of it is like different, performing different functions, but it's made of the same like set of instructions. It's just the same, like one guy made like a set of instruction. One is performing different functions on like a desktop or something. You can see it like that. So that's how I wanted to present that. So yeah, sorry, couldn't get more than this, but yeah, I think I'm sorry. I wanted to set up this kind of framework so that we view it from a perspective of each level mirroring something that's at the highest possible condition or goal of a living entity. So that's how I wanted to set all this up so that we can see it in that way. I hope that's okay. Sorry, I think I went.
Hare Krishna, Karthik Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Can you share this your slide for us this week so that
Yes.
we can just will recollect and try to understand
Yes.
for the next class to come.
Yeah, sure. I'll send
Please
this
share
over.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure, I'll send this over. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Karthik Krpanavatsala. How are you? Thanks for this
Hare
wonderful
Krishna, Prabhu.
presentation.
Doing good, Prabhu.
And this time I actually found it little more easier to understand than your last couple of classes. Although now our understanding is little bit getting improved from the first one. It was so difficult to understand, but I think we are. It seems that you are on a different platform, and we are not on this platform to understand this.
No problem. Just whatever, just Prabhupada Maharaj and Ashish Maharaj. Sorry, there's some echo. Someone is having some echo. There's some echo.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sorry, there's some echo. I don't know who's this. Sorry, there's some serious echo.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Karthik,
Hare Krishna,
I want to call Karthik because I'm Girija Mataji here. I enjoyed
Hare
your
Krishna
lecture.
Mataji, Dandat Pranams Mataji. Hare Krishna Mataji.
No, I have to say Dandavat Pranam to you, even though you are my son. But I'm very proud of you as a Jayanti Mataji, Sai Prabhu's son. Really, I'm telling, I enjoyed it.
Mataji, it's all Maharaj's mercy. So
Yeah, of course.
definitely,
Karthik,
I'm just trying to present
remembering
something.
small, my good old days with your mom, the small Karthik, but still I'm enjoying your this thing. All the best. Really,
Thank you,
God
Mataji.
bless
Please
you.
pray for me.
Krishna's
Please pray
mercy.
for me. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare
Please continue to
Krishna.
pray for me. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so
Take
much
care.
for
Hope
coming.
you remember. Hope you remember me. No.
Yeah. I remember Mataji very well. Yes. Thank you, Mataji.
Okay.
Thank you
Hare,
so much for coming. We can
Hare
catch up
Krishna.
offline. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah, Karthik, one small
Sorry, bro. Yes.
today, yeah, when you said the living entity loses in the verse 3.26.5 to 7, he loses Gyan, Bala, and Kriya. I think we went through these verses, but I can you little bit elaborate this? How does he loses Gyan, Bala, and Kriya, and then he has to
Yes.
get into real world after that?
Yeah.
Just
Yes, it's 5, 6, and 7, right? The losing. Yes. So first I see is losing the knowledge, right? So this no, it's not directly correlated, but I'm just trying to correlate it with something. So I might not be like 100% like okay, but so what I see is he loses his knowledge covering feature. He's covered illusion by the knowledge covering feature. So his knowledge is lost. So that I see in 5. So the first thing, he loses his jnana. Then he loses his bala. So bala is actually Prabhupada describes that bala doesn't mean that it's a physical strength. It's perception. So we have to, it's spiritual perception. That's how Prabhupada says. Prabhupada says many people, especially this some people have interpreted bala means you pray to Balram, means he's giving you just physical strength. So that means they want you to be strong, because bala means very strong. It's physical. He's saying no, it's mental strength. So it's perception. So perception is he loses the incorrect, he accepts the material influence of material energy as his only field of activities, right? So then like my understanding is he's losing the perspective from the 13th chapter, right? The kshetrajñas chapi mam viti.
He is no more able to see the spiritual perspective of the things, and he gets into the material perspective. That's what you mean by this?
Yes, that's yeah. He takes, so there is this it's called so it's he gets into the wrong perception. He gets into the wrong he gets into sorry, where's the verse? We should go back. Sorry. Yeah, so he gets into the wrong perception. So then the final one, Prabhu, it's like he's losing his final so then the final one is activities, right? He does not do anything, and he's transcendental to such. He's thus affected by conditional life. So the activity I see as like material kriya. So something like that. So he's basically different levels of losing jnana, bala, kriya. Because he has lost everything, he can no longer function in the spiritual world because of his like desire to independently enjoy. So then the fall begins. Then he starts to get into this cycle where he has developed his own desires to enjoy independently. Because once immediate loss of jnana, bala, kriya indicates that he has his own plans and own like setup of how he wants to deal with the world, something like that. So that's just my limited understanding, Prabhu. Sorry, you can correct me if it's wrong.
I think that's very much. I think it was very difficult to understand the 3 verses, but you nicely explained, and that's the reason we do a lot of hearing this kathas and satsanga. So to get this back, the spiritual perception and the spiritual knowledge and the spiritual activities. We even in today's lecture or any lecture we attend, if we don't have interest or if we don't have, we don't get this 3 point at all. We don't understand the spiritual activity, we don't understand the spiritual perception, we don't understand the spiritual knowledge. So that's because we have lost it, and to gain it back again, we have to go through this process to
Shravanam.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you. Sorry, I think I instead of focusing on mind, I wanted to set up this parallel framework so that you can see how it's related to our daily life.
Karthik,
It's so nice, actually. This parallels 5 levels you have shown is, sorry, Prabhu, I think I interrupted you. I
Sorry.
think somebody what you were speaking. So these
I
5
think
levels are quite
that
very nicely presented, and I think it is we should meditate on these levels more and more to understand. This chapter would be more clear to us if we understand these levels and try to correlate all the verses with these levels. You have nicely summarized the whole chapter in these 5 levels. It seems. I think it's very nice, actually. It's really
yeah,
nice.
that was I'm aiming to do. Sorry, bro. Yeah, I think I didn't focus on the words, but I wanted to set up this,
No.
this framework
It is
based on
more
Prabhupada Maharaj's
helpful
idea.
to.
So
It is more helpful to. It is.
thank you.
This
Yeah, it's
case.
Maharaj's idea actually. So
Yeah. Sorry, Prabhuji, some devotees were speaking in between.
ask you, Dana Bala Kriya means this is Chit, Sat and Anand. All 3 are lost, correct?
yes, exactly.
And
Yes.
that is transformed into mode of ignorance, mode of passion, and
Mode of ignorance, mode of passion. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Dana Bala Kriya.
Yes. I think your voice is going out. Is going on and off.
Karthik,
Your voice is going on and off, like it's drowning away.
what I'm saying is,
Again, it's drowning off. Sorry. Are you near the mic? Or?
yes. Can you hear me?
Is okay.
Hey, Krishna. Can you hear me?
Why is it's good and then it's all? Oh, it's okay. Yeah, I don't know what happened. It's good and bad. It's okay. It's okay. Not too good, but okay. I don't know.
Sat and Anand.
Yes.
The Chit, Sat and Anand is nothing but Jnana Bala Kriya.
Yeah. That's what. Yes. This is from Sridhar Maharaj. Yeah. It's a symptoms.
Yeah. No, I know.
The concept
That's
is
all.
the same. It's just symptoms. Yes.
And then this is the Sambit Sandhini and Alan. And
Ladini.
this
Yes.
one, to the little more, when we leave the association of Krishna, then we become the sons of Prakriti, the material nature comes, which is nothing but the
Yes.
modes of material nature, which can't have
Most of
nature.
it.
Correct?
Yes.
Oh.
Exactly. Yes.
Hi, Krishna Prabhuji. You reminded of your young days classes once you took in Guru Prakash Prabhu's house. You remember? Creation.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, creation. Okay. Yes.
On creation.
It's become, I think basis of my life is only this now. Every time it's very fascinating for me. So
very nice, Prabhuji. You're a genius.
nothing. It's all Maharaj's idea. Mataji is all. Maharaj is the true source. So you can listen to Prabhupada Maharaj, or he has some amazing ways of commenting on these topics. So it's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol, Hare Krishna. So nice
Hare
to
Krishna.
hear one point. Thank you so much. You shared many points. One of the point I want to understand more, that initially you said when Prabhupada approached that to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and you that conversation, probably some conversation, and where Prabhupada said, even though I not understand, but I went on hearing and it pleased my Guru Maharaj. Means like this boy will not go away. So regarding this, Prabhu, in a practical level, for example, there is always a propensity, like whether it is verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, means our propensity is wherever we understand, we go through, and if we do not understand, we just skip through. Is it does applies in the sense we should not skip through? Means if I translate that in the same principle to the level like in Srimad Bhagavatam, whether it is hearing a lecture or reading a scripture, is it that same principle apply? We should not skip through because it is coming from the pure devotees, either writings like Srila Prabhupada's purport, or in that matter from Sukdev Goswami's verses, or on that matter it is Srimad Bhagavatam verse. So that itself carries the purity. Is it how we'll understand in practical level? of
Prabhu,
that.
yeah, honestly, if you ask me, like this verse, like if you want to see the qualifications of Suta Goswami, is 117, is a paravara vidaha. He's conversant with both physical and metaphysical knowledge. Means these they're not just understanding of Krishna, everything else, all these energies. So they understand everything very beautifully. So there might always be some aspects which you might not easily understand. So the encouragement is that we should try to attentively, submissively try to hear. But if it goes to a point where we feel agitated, let's say I'm reading this, let's say some tough topics, like for instance, this. Okay, so this is what actually Hanumat Preshaka Maharaj told me. So when I was asking him about these difficult topics and how to understand, so this is what he told me. He told me, so there is an injunction, right? Like if you the best way to curb sex desire is to listen to the pure relationships between Krishna and internal energy, listen to the rasa dance and all this stuff. So there's an instruction like that. So Prabhupada, so he asked Prabhupada, and Prabhupada told him that, and then he started reading that. So then after that, after some time, Mukunda Maharaj started reading it, and then he felt he felt like more agitated. Then again, he wrote a letter to Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, actually, I'm being more agitated. Then he said, okay, use common sense, don't read something else. So this is what Maharaj told me. Like if it's too difficult, if it's too tough, anything, we try our best. But that doesn't mean we get into this point where like we are endlessly trying to go on and on about like that, to the point where we are feeling agitated, demotivated, or something. And Garuda Das, I listen to him a lot. So he tells me like there may be so many verses in a book. Like there are so many verses in a book or in a chapter or so many, or in an entire scripture. So he says there are some verses which you will connect to it in a far deeper way than any other verse. He says just embrace the verse. He says for him it's this verse, Yomam Pashyati Sarvatra Sarvam Cha Mai Pashyati Tasya Hamna Pranashyami Sachamena Pranashyati. So Prabhu says this verse I like so much. I'm so attracted to this verse. I think it's the second last verse, or one who sees me everywhere.
630.
Sixth chapter though.
630.
I don't know if someone can give me the number. The
6.30.
630. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yes. So Yomam Pashyati Sarvatra Sarvam Cha Mai Pashyati Tasya Hamna Pranashyami Sachamena Pranashyati. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I'm never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. So Prabhu says this verse, he says this is such my favorite verse. So I keep this very close to my heart. So this is something I really treasure and I really like very much. So this verse gives me inspiration. It helps me to understand everything. And then he has a page 268 verse in Bhagavatam, that's actually 1522, and so on. I'm just giving examples. But my point is like for instance, my favorite verse in this whole thing is in this whole chapter is that 326 the 14. That's my favorite verse because I like it in Bhagavad-Gita also, because it personally I'm able to connect to that verse than any of the other verses. So Prabhu encourages that if you're finding something difficult, it's fine. You try that, but it's okay. But there are other things which will resonate to you and appeal to you in a way that none of the other verses will. This is not minimizing the other verses, but it's just that we have a natural gravitation toward that specific verse. So then Prabhu says, just embrace that verse, keep thinking about it, and make that kind of like your everything. Right? So personally, if you ask me, Prabhu, I think we try to understand everything, but we understand that these things are very complex. I also don't understand many of this. I'm just trying just a little bit to understand like some portion of it. But there are always some verses which will. So I think he said that verse speaks to me or something like that. He said like that verse speaks to you or something like that. So there are always verses in the Bhagavatam or in Bhagavad-Gita that will speak to you more than any of the other verses. That's my personal feel. Like this verse, it speaks so much to me. It's not that that I understand this verse or something, but I feel like there's something about it that's mesmerizing, or I don't know how do you call it, like the karya karana kartritva, not this one, the 14th chapter verse of Bhagavad-Gita, which is also coming in this chapter. So it just speaks to me more than any of the other verses. So I just try to stay engaged with that, think about it, spend time with it. It gives me a lot of satisfaction and everything. So the aim of Shastra should not be to trouble ourselves, or we are not at that stage. Like Advaita Acharya, he used to fast because he didn't understand any of the Bhagavad Gita verses. This is not even Bhagavatam. He said he didn't understand, or he used to fast because he doesn't understand the Bhagavad Gita verses. So that's a very high level. So if you ask me personally, Prabhu, I would suggest let's embrace the verses which speak to us more than any of the others. Like that would be a good way to start. Then we try to understand everything. But then again, there's also this thing of like, how much do I want to know about certain things? I have a lot of, like, personally, Prabhu, because of I'm in mode of passion, I need a lot of this origins and everything.